The reason why I say Caliban is the worst is because he's not a true sentient, but only a failed experiment Warframe that got mediocre skills from other Warframes in the game. First of all, let's talk about his adaptive armor passive. Caliban and allies within his affinity range gain adaptive armor that builds damage resistance against the highest damage type received from enemy attacks, stacking 5% per hit up to a cap of 50%. If Caliban or his allies do not receive damage for 5 seconds, their adaptive armor loses 2% per second until fully removed. This is great on paper, but in reality, it doesn't help the team nor the Warframe at all. It's like the worst adaptation mod, as it only grants 50% damage resistance from a specific damage type, and the worst part is that it decays, and you will need to stack the damage resistance first. Now, I understand that the current state of the shield values in the game, which grants 50% damage reduction except for Toxin, makes the adaptive armor decent, but I was hoping that at least they give Caliban the 90% damage resistant. It's crazy to think sometimes that I needed to mod for adaptation because the 50% damage resistance given by the adaptive armor is not that effective at all, especially in Steel Path levels and beyond. Also, Caliban's abilities are just copied from other Warframes, but the developer did not even bother to make it good. His first ability makes him a dumb spin to fail Warframe, and it even looks bad when compared to Yarley's Aqua Blades. His second ability, Sentient Wrath, is good in crowd control and damage vulnerability debuff, but it's not as effective as other vulnerability debuffs in the game. Also, his sentient friends are dumb, always spinning around and doing little damage to enemies, and you only need them for the constant shield regeneration to help Caliban survive harsh scenarios. The worst is that their levels don't scale with enemy levels, and it has this weird mechanic wherein your max level multiplied by your power strength will determine the level of these sentient units. Digital Extremes are afraid to give us AFK farming method, and I understand that, so that is why they don't give us companions that can deal the same damage as our Warframe loadout, except for on-call crews holding a Kuvazar, of course. All I want to say is that at least Digital Extremes will let his sentient friends scale their levels with the enemy levels in the mission. They don't have any broken attack anyway that will kill Steel Path enemies with one spin, and they are commonly used as distraction and for shield regeneration. His best ability, in my opinion, is his ultimate Fusion Strike, but again, it's just like a new version of existing abilities that can strip both armor and shield. Also, Pillage is much better since it does give you shield aside from defense stripping, and it also covers a wide area compared to this ability that is kind of junky sometimes and covers a cone-shaped line of sight. In most cases, you'll need to group enemies before casting the ability to make it effective in a real mission. You can do this with a Nautilus companion equipped with the Cordon Mod Precept or the Magus Anomaly Arcane in your operator, but the reality is this grouping setup is only effective in endless missions, and I bet that it would be a hassle to do this in exterminate missions, wherein you can just use your guns to kill enemies fast and exit the mission faster. The best ability combo I am using for this Warframe is casting Fusion Strike, then casting Wrathful Advance for the vulnerability debuff. Aside from that, I'm using his Lethal Progeny to keep my Caliban alive with the shield regeneration. This was broken in the past because this paired well with the shield regeneration of the Topaz Archon Shard. All you need to do is pair it with a Sentinel with the blast procs on their weapon, and you will abuse the shield gating mechanic on this Warframe, turning Caliban into an immortal sentient. However, that was only a bug that got fixed by Digital Extremes, and right now the only build that I can suggest, which is reliable in real mission, is the Eclipse Caliban build. In this build, you will replace his Razor Gyre ability with Eclipse, but you won't use Mirage ability for the damage buff. Instead, you will be using the Lunar Eclipse buff, which grants 75% damage reduction. This will pair well with the adaptation mod I have in my build and the 50% damage reduction coming from shield, except for Toxin status procs. Now, you might say that adaptation is redundant for this build since Caliban has a 50% damage resistance as his passive, but the reality is that it's a reliable source of damage reduction for the Warframe, hence I decided to add adaptation in the build. The 50% damage resistance you give to your allies is great, but I think it would be best that Caliban will somehow get a 90% damage reduction. Just my opinion, but I think this sentient Warframe deserves a tougher source of survivability. This build is great in real mission, as when you don't have any choice in the Elite Deep Archimedia, then you can use Caliban with this Eclipse build. In endless runs, I highly advise that you use a combination of any grouping abilities such as the Nautilus Companion. Most of the time, you will be using his fourth and second ability to kill enemies, while maintaining Lethal Progeny active for the shield regeneration. In addition, using Eclipse will give your Caliban more survivability, allowing you to survive Steel Path and beyond enemies. However, instead of using Arcane Resistance, I highly advise that you use Arcane Energize so you can use all your abilities more often. The videos that I will show later use Arcane Resistance for defense against toxic units, but it's not needed at all since Eclipse will lower the damage inflicted by the element in your health. The good thing about Fusion Strike is it removes the armor and shield of Acolytes and almost all enemies in Steel Path levels, except for bosses like the Archons in the Archon Hunt mission. Now, you can use other helmet abilities for the Warframe, but so far, Eclipse is the ability that makes the Warframe decent in real mission for me. But the reality is, I needed a lot of things to make this Warframe viable and beyond Steel Path levels. In fact, I added yellow Archon Shards also for the casting speed bonus, as I feel the abilities of Caliban are slow, especially his Fusion Strike. Lastly, the build is good in Steel Path levels, up up to Netrocell levels with modifiers, but I haven't tested it yet with Elite Deep Archimedia. I'm sorry because I got little time for testing as I arrived late from work, but I promise to give you an update tomorrow in the pinned comment. The rest of the video shows you how tough this Caliban is in real mission, proving that you can actually play Caliban and not just store him in the Mastery Rank fodder locker. But again, you always have a choice whether you want to play the Warframe or not. In the end, I think Digital Extreme's next agenda for Warframe rework should focus on Caliban. Now, I would also like to know your opinion about the Warframe in the comment section below. Let us discuss the things that are needed for this Warframe to be great. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you again in our next video. Squad Leader, signing off.